It had been years since the man last saw her. Life had moved on, and he had settled in a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the hustle and bustle of war and conflict. His days were now filled with simple tasks, working on a small colony on the edge of human space. He had tried to forget the past, but some memories never truly faded. One calm afternoon, as the sun set over the horizon, a strange light appeared in the sky. It wasn't a normal ship. The shape was unfamiliar, and the energy signature was unlike anything the man had ever seen. His curiosity was piqued, and before he knew it, he was standing in the clearing, watching as the craft descended slowly towards the ground. The ship touched down with a soft hum. The ground trembled slightly, and the man instinctively stepped back. It was sleek, alien, nothing like the human-made ships he was used to. He stood there, frozen, unsure of what to expect. As the hatch opened, he saw her. She stepped out, her eyes immediately locking onto his. Her presence was commanding, yet there was something about her that seemed so familiar. He stared at her, unable to believe his eyes. She had changed, of course. It had been so long. Her body was no longer the fragile, wounded thing he had once helped nurse back to health. She stood tall and regal, her skin now glowing with an otherworldly grace. Her long hair, once matted with dirt and blood, flowed like liquid silver. The eyes that once stared up at him in fear now glowed with the intensity of a ruler's resolve. "Do you remember me?" she asked, her voice soft, but carrying the weight of a queen. The man's heart raced. He hadn't forgotten her, of course. He couldn't. He had saved her life so many years ago, when she had crashed onto Earth, alone and injured. He had found her in the woods, not knowing who she was, not knowing the extraordinary path her life would take. He had cared for her, and when she had recovered, she had vanished, disappearing into the stars as suddenly as she had arrived. But now, standing before him, she was no longer the alien girl he had once helped. She was something else entirely. You're the queen of the Accelera," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. A smile tugged at her lips, but it was a smile that held both pride and sorrow. "Yes, I am, and I've come to thank you for saving my life." The man didn't know what to say. Years had passed, and so much had changed, but one thing remained clear. The girl he had once helped had returned, and she was no longer the lost alien he had helped years ago. She was a queen, with all the power and responsibility that came with it. She stepped closer, her eyes still locked on his. "I need your help. The future of my people depends on it." The man looked into her eyes, seeing both the weight of her title and the soft, fragile memory of the girl she once was. He knew he couldn't refuse her. The man stood quietly beside the queen as they walked through the corridors of her starship. The walls gleamed with advanced technology, lights blinking in a pattern that seemed almost alive. Everything was so different from the small, quiet colony he had called home. The ship felt alive with the hum of energy, its engines pulsing with power. "You've come a long way," the man said, his voice filled with awe. He had never imagined the girl he once saved would rise to such heights. It had only been a few short years, but she had transformed into a leader, one of great power, someone capable of commanding an entire people. The queen nodded, her expression serious but calm. "It hasn't been easy. After you saved me, I returned to my homeworld, only to find my people in chaos. My predecessor, the former ruler, was corrupt. I had to fight to claim my place on the throne." The man could see the weight of her words in her eyes. She wasn't just a queen by birthright. She had earned it through battles and sacrifices. She had fought for her people, and now they looked to her for guidance. "But you've done it," the man said, glancing at her with respect. "You're their queen." The queen's eyes softened for a moment. "I've led them through wars, betrayals, and revolts. But now I have to face something far worse. A faction of my own people wants to take my throne. They believe I'm too weak, that my power isn't enough to save us from what's coming." The man looked at her, surprised by the vulnerability in her voice. He had always seen her as strong, unshakable. But here, now, he could see that the crown she wore came with more than just glory and honor. It came with fear, doubt, and the threat of losing everything. "I didn't come here just to show you how far I've come," the queen continued, her voice steady again. "I came because I need your help. There are forces gathering, both within my own ranks and beyond, that could destroy everything I fought for. I need someone who can see past the politics and stand by me when I have no one else to trust." The man was silent for a moment, weighing her words. He had once been her protector, but now he was faced with a new role, one that went beyond what he had ever imagined. Could he really help her again, not as the wounded girl he once saved, but as the powerful queen she had become? "I owe you more than I can ever repay," the queen said, as if reading his thoughts. "But the debt I owe you is not just for saving my life. It's for showing me that even in the darkest times, there is a reason to fight." The man felt a weight settle over him. He had no idea how he could help, but one thing was clear: his life would never be the same. And as he looked at the queen, this alien woman who had changed so much, he knew he could never refuse her. "I'll help you," he said, his voice firm. "Whatever it takes." The man had never seen anything like it. The royal palace of the Tsel era was a breathtaking sight. Towering spires of gleaming metal reached up into the sky, surrounded by vibrant gardens filled with strange alien plants. The air was thick with the hum of advanced technology, yet it all felt so peaceful, like a dream. The queen led him through the palace, her every step filled with purpose. She had told him about her people, the Tsel era, a proud race known for their wisdom and strength. They had once been scattered across the galaxy, but under her rule, they had come together as a united force. "The Tsel era were once a peaceful people," the queen explained as they walked. "But that peace was shattered by greed and war. Many of my people believe the old ways are the only way forward. They cling to the past, unwilling to accept change." The man nodded, listening intently. He could sense the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Being a queen was never easy, but for someone like her, with the power to shape the future of an entire race, the pressure must be unimaginable. They entered a large chamber filled with ancient artifacts. At the center of the room stood a massive stone pedestal covered in strange symbols. The queen walked toward it, her eyes softening as she gazed at the markings. "This is the heart of our people," she said quietly. "These markings tell the story of my ancestors, of the first Tsel era rulers who discovered the power that flows through our bloodline." The man stepped closer, intrigued by the symbols. "What kind of power?" The queen turned to face him, her expression serious. "The power to control the very fabric of the universe. My bloodline holds the key to an ancient force, one that could either save my people or destroy them." The man was stunned. He had heard of powerful beings in the galaxy, but nothing like this. The idea that one race could hold the power to change reality itself seemed almost impossible. Yet, looking at the queen, he could see that she believed it completely. "Why is it dangerous?" he asked. She hesitated, her eyes clouding with uncertainty. "Because it's not just a gift, it's a curse. The power is unpredictable. It can bring life, but it can also bring death. If I lose control of it, it could tear my people apart." The man watched her carefully. He could see the fear in her eyes, and he understood. This was not just a matter of politics or war. The future of an entire species rested on the queen's shoulders, and it was clear that she was not sure she was ready for the responsibility. "I don't know what to do with it," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know if I can control it." The man placed a hand on her shoulder, offering the only comfort he could. "You don't have to do it alone. I'm here." For a moment, the queen allowed herself to lean into the gesture, grateful for the man's support. She had come so far, and yet the hardest part of her journey was just beginning. The tension in the royal court was thick. The man had been in many tense situations before, but nothing compared to the political games played in the heart of the Tsel era palace. Every day seemed to bring new plots, whispers, and power struggles. It was a world where everyone had something to hide, and trust was a rare commodity. The queen walked with her head held high, but the man could see the strain in her eyes. She was still adjusting to her role as queen, but there were others in the court who were determined to test her strength and loyalty. One evening, as the sun set over the palace, the man joined the queen in her private chambers. She had summoned him to discuss a matter that weighed heavily on her mind. "I don't know who I can trust anymore," she confessed, pacing across the room. "Every time I turn around, there's someone else plotting against me, even within my own council." The man watched her closely. He had seen her lead her people with strength and grace, but now he saw a woman who was tired, unsure, and struggling to maintain control. He could feel the weight of her words. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. She stopped pacing and turned to him, her expression full of frustration. "I have a trusted advisor, Minister Heron. He's been with me since I took the throne. But I've been hearing rumors, whispers that he's working with the rival faction. He wants to see me fall." The man frowned. A trusted advisor turning on a queen was a dangerous thing. "Are you sure?" The queen hesitated before answering. "I have seen the signs. He's been meeting with others behind my back. His loyalty is slipping. If he truly is working against me, he's more dangerous than any external enemy I could face." The man didn't say anything at first, but his mind raced. If Minister Heron was betraying the queen, it could destroy everything she had worked for. This wasn't just about politics, it was about her life. "Maybe it's time to confront him," the man said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "If he's truly plotting against you, you need to know for sure. And if it's true, you can deal with it before it's too late." The queen looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt and fear. "What if he denies it? What if I lose the support of the court? If he's as powerful as I think, he could turn my own people against me." The man nodded. "It's a risk, but you can't let him control your fate. You're the queen. You have the strength to face this head-on." For a long moment, the queen stood still, as if weighing her options. Finally, she made up her mind. "All right," she said, her voice quiet but strong. "We'll confront him. But we must be careful. One wrong move, and we could lose everything." The man nodded in agreement. They would have to tread carefully, but there was no other choice. If Minister Heron was truly betraying her, the time for silence was over. It was time to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. The queen knew the confrontation with Minister Heron could change everything. He had been a trusted advisor, but now she wasn't sure who she could trust. The man, who had once been a stranger to her, had become her ally, and she relied on him more than ever. They spent hours together, making plans and preparing for what was to come. The queen, despite the fear in her heart, began to find a new strength in herself. The weight of her crown felt lighter with the man by her side. The moment arrived when the queen decided to take action. She called Minister Heron to her chambers, where the man stood quietly beside her, ready for whatever might happen. The air in the room was thick with tension as the minister entered, his face calm and unreadable. "Your Majesty," he said with a bow, his voice smooth. "What is it you wish to discuss?" The queen stood tall, her eyes locked on his. "I know about your meetings with the rival faction," she said, her voice steady. "You've been plotting against me, haven't you?" The minister's face remained unchanged, but the man could see the brief flicker of surprise in his eyes. He wasn't expecting to be caught so quickly. "Your Majesty," Heron said, his voice smooth, "I don't know what you're talking about. I've always served you faithfully." But the queen wasn't fooled. She had seen the signs, and now she had the proof. The man stood silently by her side, ready to back her up, whatever the outcome. "You can't lie to me, Heron," the queen said. "I know the truth. You've been working against me from the inside." The room was silent for a moment. The minister's expression shifted from calm to something darker. He had been caught, and there was no way to deny it now. "It's true," he admitted, his voice cold. "I've been working with the rival faction. I never believed you could truly lead us. You're too weak. You were never meant to rule." The queen's heart sank, but she didn't let it show. She had suspected the truth, but hearing it from his lips was another matter. "And now you'll pay the price," she said, her voice firm, her eyes never leaving his. Minister Heron sneered, but it wasn't just arrogance that filled his eyes. There was fear, too. Fear of what might happen next. The queen had always been seen as a figurehead, but now she was showing them what true power looked like. "I've already prepared for this," the minister said, stepping back. "You won't defeat me that easily." Before the man could react, the doors to the chamber burst open, and armed guards flooded into the room. But the queen was ready. She turned to the man who had already moved into position. He had seen enough battles in his life to know when to act. Together, they stood strong, facing the betrayal head-on. The queen, no longer the fragile girl who had once been lost and afraid, was rising to her true power. And in that moment, the man realized something. It was no longer about saving her. It was about standing beside her as she became the ruler she was always meant to be. The days after Minister Heron's betrayal were filled with tension. The queen's enemies had begun to gather, each one hoping to take advantage of the power vacuum that had opened. But the queen, with the man by her side, was determined not to let anyone tear her kingdom apart. The man noticed a change in her during these days. The strength she had always shown was now mixed with a quiet urgency. She no longer appeared merely as a queen, but as someone who knew that the fate of her people rested on her shoulders. And yet he could see the fear in her eyes whenever she looked at the ancient artifacts in the royal chambers. One evening, the queen summoned the man to a private room deep within the palace. This room was unlike any other, dimly lit, filled with strange symbols carved into the walls. At the center of the room stood a large stone pedestal, upon which lay an ancient book, its cover decorated with glowing patterns that seemed to shift and change. "This is the heart of our people," the queen explained, her voice trembling slightly. "This is where our true power comes from." The man stepped closer, curiosity burning in his chest. "What do you mean? You said before that your bloodline holds power, but what exactly is it?" The queen's expression grew serious as she walked toward the pedestal. She hesitated for a moment before lifting the book. She opened it slowly, revealing pages filled with more of the strange symbols. "This book," she said, "was created by the first rulers of the Accelera. It tells the story of how they found the power of the universe within themselves. It's more than just a history. It's a guide to understanding and controlling the energy that flows through our bloodline." The man watched her carefully. "But you said it's dangerous. Why keep it hidden?" The queen's eyes darkened. "Because the power in this book is not just a gift, it's a curse. If misused, it can destroy everything. Our people, the galaxy, the very fabric of reality itself." She paused and turned to face him, her gaze intense. "I have to use it, though. The enemies of my people are too strong. And if I don't act now, we'll lose everything." The man stepped closer, his voice filled with concern. "Are you sure you can control it? You've seen what it can do. The power, it's not just strength. It changes people." The queen clenched her fists, her eyes filled with determination. "I don't have a choice. My people need me. I need this power." The man could see the conflict inside her, the struggle between wanting to protect her people and the fear of what using the power might cost. He had seen powerful leaders before, but none had ever faced such a dangerous decision. "Please be careful," he said, his voice gentle but filled with warning. "You're not just the queen anymore. You're something more. And I don't want to see you lose yourself." The queen met his gaze, her expression softening for a moment. "I won't lose myself. I can't. Not now." But even as she said the words, the man could see the doubt in her eyes. She was still unsure, still afraid of what using the power might mean. And as the queen closed the book and turned away, he realized that the true battle wasn't against her enemies. It was against the power that she was so desperate to control. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. The queen had made her decision to use the forbidden power, but every time she focused on it, a part of her hesitated. The man could see it in her eyes, the fear that it might consume her. He had seen powerful leaders fall because they didn't understand the full cost of their choices. He didn't want to see the queen go down that path. The palace was on edge. Whispers of the queen's plan spread quickly. Some of her advisors supported her, but others were not so sure. There were always those who believed in the old ways, those who thought the queen was too young, too inexperienced to lead. They feared her power, and they feared what it might do to their people. One evening, as the man walked through the palace gardens, he saw the queen standing alone by the edge of a quiet pond. The moonlight reflected off the water, casting a soft glow over her. She looked lost in thought, her gaze distant. He approached her carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "are you all right?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared down into the water, her expression unreadable. "I don't know anymore," she said quietly. "I thought I could control it, but now, I'm not so sure." The man stood beside her, watching the water ripple in the breeze. "The power is a heavy burden," he said, his voice calm. "But you don't have to carry it alone." The queen turned to him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But I have to. My people are counting on me. If I don't do this, everything will fall apart." He could see the pain in her eyes, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. "And if you use the power, what happens then? Who will you become?" She was silent for a moment, as if considering his words. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know. I just know I can't let my people suffer because of my fear. I have to act before it's too late." The man watched her, his heart heavy. He understood her desire to protect her people, but he also feared that in doing so, she might lose herself. "But what about you? What happens to the person you are now, the person who cares about others? If you let the power consume you, you might lose everything you've worked for." The queen looked away, her jaw tight with emotion. "I can't lose my people. They need me to be strong." "Being strong doesn't mean losing who you are," the man said. "You don't have to let this power change you. You are strong because of who you are, not because of the power you wield." For the first time in days, the queen looked at him with something resembling hope in her eyes. She reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "Thank you. I don't know what I would do without you." He smiled softly, feeling a sense of peace settle in. "You're not alone in this. I'm with you, no matter what." But even as they stood together in the moonlight, the man knew that their journey was far from over. The queen's struggle was just beginning. She would have to face not only her enemies, but her own fear, her own doubts, and the danger of the power that threatened to tear her apart. The time had come. The queen stood in front of her people, the weight of the crown on her head heavier than ever. The decision she had made to use her power was now unavoidable. Her enemies were at the gates, and there was no turning back. The man stood beside her, watching the crowd that had gathered in the grand hall. It was filled with tension, fear, and hope. The queen's people were ready to fight, but many of them still didn't fully understand the consequences of what their queen had decided. The queen's eyes scanned the room. Her hand rested on the hilt of a blade at her side, a symbol of the strength she had earned over years of struggle. Her heart raced, but her face remained calm. "You've all seen what has happened," she said, her voice steady but firm. "I will use the power my ancestors gave me. It's the only way to secure our future. There's no more time for hesitation. We either stand together or we fall." The crowd murmured, and the man could feel the uncertainty in the air. Many of them were not as sure about the queen's decision as she was. But they trusted her. They had no choice but to follow her. The man knew that, deep down, she was terrified. He could see the small tremor in her hands, The way her eyes lingered on the ancient book she had been carrying ever since her decision was made. The power inside that book was immense, but it was also dangerous. If she lost control, if she became too consumed by it, everything could be lost. "Are you ready?" the man asked, stepping closer to her. The queen turned to him, her face softening for a moment. "I don't know if I'm ready, but I have no choice. I can't let my people suffer." "I'm with you," the man said, his voice quiet but full of certainty. With a deep breath, the queen raised her hands. A quiet hum filled the air as the ancient power began to stir within her. It started slowly, like a low vibration under her skin, and then grew stronger, filling the room with a powerful energy. The man watched in awe as the queen's eyes glowed with the strength of the universe itself. But he also saw the fear in her eyes. The fear that this power would change her, that it might destroy everything she had worked for. He stepped forward, ready to help her if she faltered. Suddenly, the doors of the grand hall burst open. The enemy had arrived. They marched in, their weapons raised, ready to destroy the queen and take control of the Accelera. The queen turned to face them, her eyes fierce. "This is our home, and we will defend it." With a single motion, she raised her hand. The power surged through her, and a wave of energy crashed through the room, knocking the enemy soldiers off their feet. The man felt the intensity of the power in the air, but he could also see the strain on the queen's face. She was pushing herself beyond what she knew she could handle. "Hold them off," the queen shouted. "Protect the palace." The battle erupted around them. The man fought alongside the queen's soldiers, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never seen the queen use her power like this before. It was both beautiful and terrifying. She was unstoppable, but the price of that power was becoming clear. The enemy forces were falling, but the queen's energy was draining. With every blast of power, she grew weaker, her movements slower. The man knew that if she didn't stop soon, she wouldn't be able to control the power anymore. "Stop," the man cried, rushing to her side. She turned to him, her face pale and strained. "I have to finish this. We can't let them win." But he saw the fear in her eyes now, the fear that using the power had taken too much from her. Together, they pushed through the final waves of enemies. With one last, powerful surge of energy, the queen defeated the remaining forces. The room fell silent as the enemy was vanquished. The queen collapsed to her knees, her strength gone. The man rushed to her side, holding her gently. She looked up at him, her breathing shallow. "We did it," she whispered. "Yes, you did," the man said, his voice filled with both pride and worry. But as the queen lay in his arms, the man knew this was not the end. The battle was won, but the cost of the power was still yet to be fully realized. The battle was over, and the palace was quiet. The sounds of war had faded, replaced by an eerie calm. The queen had fought with all her strength, and her people had rallied behind her. Together, they had defeated the enemy. The threat was gone, but the cost was high. The man sat beside the queen, who was resting in the royal chamber. Her body was tired, and the energy she had used to defend her people had drained her. Her once glowing eyes were now dim, and her breathing was slow. But even in this weakened state, there was something powerful about her. The man couldn't help but admire her courage and determination. "You did it," he said quietly, watching her. The queen turned her head slightly, her lips curving into a faint smile. "We did it. You stood by me, even when things seemed impossible." He nodded, his gaze softening. "I promised I would help you, and I meant it." She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering what little strength she had left. "I never wanted to become this powerful. I only wanted to protect my people. But maybe I've changed too much." The man shook his head. "You've done what needed to be done. You saved your people. You became the leader they needed, even if it wasn't easy." The queen's eyes fluttered open again, and she looked at him, a new understanding in her eyes. "I don't know what happens next. I fought so hard for this throne, but now I feel like I've lost a part of myself. I'm not sure who I am anymore." The man gently took her hand, offering the only comfort he could. "You're still you. The power doesn't define you. What matters is what's in your heart. You've always been a leader, even before all this." She smiled weakly, squeezing his hand. "Maybe you're right, but the power I used, it's a part of me now. I can't ignore it." He nodded, understanding her struggle. The power was a part of her, but it didn't have to control her. "You've already proven that you can control it. You didn't let it take over." The queen stared at the ceiling, lost in thought. "I wonder if my people will see me the same way after all this. Will they still trust me, or will they only see the queen who used that power?" "They will see the leader who saved them," the man said firmly. "You've earned their trust, and you've earned your place as their queen." The queen closed her eyes again, her breath deepening as she relaxed into the bed. "I hope so. I want to make sure the future is better for them. I don't want to lead through fear or power alone." "You won't," the man assured her. "You'll lead with wisdom, kindness, and strength. Those are the qualities that will define your legacy." The queen smiled, a real smile this time, though it was tired. "Thank you for everything." The man watched her, a sense of peace settling in his heart. The queen had done what she needed to do. The galaxy had been saved, and her people had a chance at a better future. But the greatest change was in her. She had learned that true power wasn't about control. It was about understanding, compassion, and the strength to protect what mattered most. And as the queen rested, the man knew that the journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more decisions to be made. But whatever came next, they would face it together. The sun rose over the royal palace, casting a warm, golden light across the gardens. The air was calm, and the peaceful silence felt almost unreal after the chaos of the past days. The queen stood on the balcony, looking out over her land. The kingdom was safe, for now, but the weight of her decisions still lingered. Beside her, the man stood quietly, watching her. He could see the strength in her, but also the weariness that came with the battles she had fought, not just against enemies, but against herself. "You've done it," he said, breaking the silence. "Your people are safe. You've proven yourself." The queen turned to him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I never thought it would end like this. I never imagined I'd become the ruler I am now." The man nodded, his gaze soft. "But you didn't become a ruler through power or fear. You became a ruler because you cared, because you fought for what was right." The queen took a deep breath, the weight of her words sinking in. "I almost lost myself in the fight. The power, it was too much. I thought it would give me control, but instead, it made me feel more out of control." The man stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "But you didn't let it change you. You found balance. And that's what matters." The queen looked out over the kingdom again, her eyes filled with a quiet hope. "I didn't do this alone. I had you by my side." He smiled at her words. "And I'll always be here if you need me." She turned to face him, her eyes searching his. I think I understand now. The true strength of a leader isn't in the power they hold. It's in how they use it, and who they choose to stand with." The man nodded, proud of the queen she had become. "Exactly. You've shown them the true meaning of leadership." They stood there for a long moment, the calm breeze ruffling their hair. The world around them was still healing, but the future was now in their hands. The queen had chosen a path of wisdom, compassion, and strength. She had overcome the darkness of the past and stepped into the light of a new beginning. "I know there will be more challenges ahead," the queen said softly. "But now I feel ready. I'm no longer afraid of what I might become." The man smiled, knowing that she had finally found her true self. "You've always been ready. You've always had the strength inside you." The queen smiled back, a sense of peace finally settling in her heart. "Thank you for everything. for helping me see that I don't have to do this alone." Together, they stood, looking out over the kingdom. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of hope. The queen had come a long way from the frightened girl who had crash-landed on Earth. She had become the leader her people needed, and with the man by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The journey had been long, and it had been difficult, but it had also been worth it. And as the sun continued to rise, the queen knew that her legacy was just beginning.